Welcome to A Class Act Season 2, Navigating the AI Landscape. I'm Michael Young, host and CEO of NBN Solutions. I spend most of my week in the market speaking with founders, C-suite leaders in data and technology, and AI leaders on the front line of building capability. I know firsthand the challenges, questions being asked, and exactly what is happening on the ground. And that's what this season is about, the lessons, mistakes, and breakthroughs that matter right now for leaders navigating the AI era. Let's get into this episode. So welcome to today's episode. We're diving into one of the hottest topics shaping the future of business and technology, navigating the AI landscape. Join me is Tom McLaughlin, forward deployment engineer at Tomoro, with a fascinating background in enterprise AI, infrastructure and software engineering. Tom's journey has taken him from JP Morgan through founding roles at Vault and Bitweave to now working on the cutting edge at Tomoro. Tom, great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me. It's good to be here.
No, really excited about this one. This is a brand new season, Season 2, all about navigating this wonderful world of AI. And I know you're very much involved in it, so really good to have you here. Excited.
Great to be on.
Really good. So Tom, let's just start at the beginning. You studied computer science at Strathclyde. What got you interested in AI?
There's a couple of things that kind of kicked it off fairly early. Two classes, I suppose, in particular. I didn't start immediately interested in AI. I would have said that my initial interest in this sort of stuff was more in sort of system design and sort of system thinking.
Yep.
And then in my last year of studying computer science, there was two classes in particular that kind of stuck out. One was basically a class on design patterns, which sort of covered all the how to actually build systems and how to sort of think differently about building systems. And the other one was more of an AI class, which was actually quite a good fun one. So we had a good lecturer who basically wanted to see, could we sort of use AI to play games? And there was something about that class which really seemed to stick for me. So basically there was two games in particular. Pac-Man was one of them. And the other one is 2048, which is like this sort of sliding tiles game where you have to add the numbers up to 2048. And basically we got 6 weeks to try and build an AI that can play both of those games and sort of maximize the score on it. And I think getting that early sort of view on what was possible and the stuff that we were doing was super basic.
Yeah.
But when you sort of see an AI playing a game, you're like, this is quite cool. I kind of wonder where we can sort of push this in the future. That was very much the start of it, getting into it back then.
Brilliant. Ideal. I spoke to someone recently as well. He spoke at one of our events through a story, but he actually didn't leave his room for 5 years.
Right.
And he actually just lived in a video game.
All right.
But he managed to get himself out and about and get back to uni. And he went away and did all the kind of data science, AI within video game. And that's actually his thing at the moment. So he loves all that. So really interesting. No, excellent. Then you joined JP Morgan after graduating. At some point along the way, you took Stanford's Andrew Ng's course on AI and machine learning. What prompted that and what did you take away from it?
Probably a couple of things. So it kind of continued on from the sort of university interests. Like at JP Morgan, we were very much focused on sort of building production systems.
Yep.
And there was always proximity to sort of data with that. A lot of it was sort of analysis of big data and the kind of things that you can do with that. But I think just out of personal interest, I could start to see that there was a bit more momentum coming in the sort of AI space. Andrew Ng had this Stanford course online where it was basically like AI and ML from first principles. So basically looking at like down to the sort of matrix level, what can you do with this stuff? And I mean, by today's standards, all very, very basic.
Yes.
But a nice way to sort of dip your feet into that. So like some of the stuff that you were building on that course was like OCR, kind of optical character recognition stuff. And there's such a novelty when you can actually do that for yourself on your own laptop.
Yeah.
You're like, this is something that not too long ago kind of felt like sci-fi. And now we're able to actually hack away and make this work over a 6-month course or whatever it was. So that was something that very much got me kind of interested in it there. And it was a nice way of kind of exploring it and see what was out there.
No, brilliant. It's nice to hear Andrew Ng getting a shout out on the podcast as well. I've been working in data for a long time and his name's always been in the forefront. So good. Ideal. And after that, your path takes you through Vault and then Bitweave as a founding engineer. But hardcore infrastructure work there, payment processing, massive data systems for the public sector. How do those fit into your AI story?
They were two fairly different roles, to be honest, but they're probably quite formative. So Vault was a sort of crypto-based startup. I'd got into that mainly because my dissertation at uni was basically around blockchains and the underlying sort of technology that powers them. When I was there, it was basically a founding engineer role. So there was me plus one other engineer, and we were basically responsible for building out all the sort of functionality that made that work. And one of the major things that we focused on there was being able to accept normal sort of traditional currencies and basically do the sort of exchange into cryptocurrencies such that you could actually buy things and exchange on that network. So from like an engineering perspective, it was how quickly can we build stuff with as much sort of engineering rigor to make sure that it works and it is very much functional and it sort of scales to people. And any sort of like payment and transaction processing is just typically quite hard engineering. So a great place to learn, a great place to build. But then moving on to sort of Bitweave, which is where I went after that. A kind of different role again. It was public sector work, basically really big data systems and massive sort of data throughput systems. And there was very much like a sort of machine learning and AI layer on top of that. I was there as a founding engineer, and what we were doing was basically building the infrastructure and the software around that. And I would say it's probably one of the sort of highest engineering standard places I've ever worked at. Like the people that we hired into there and the sort of things that we were building were sort of by many counts like quite insane from a scale perspective. And I think the amount of stuff that I learned there about how do you actually build these production systems and how do you make sure that they can scale to that level was just really excellent. Like it gave me that solid basis to then take that and sort of combine it with, I mean, one of the things that we had there was very much proximity to sort of AI and ML. I wasn't necessarily building those systems, but you're building around those systems and you get very familiar with what that actually looks like and what that requires. So I think the combination of kind of both of those roles and the sort of amount of engineering that we did across both of those roles is very much set the stage for kind of where we're at now. Where I guess we'll kind of talk on this, but tomorrow and what we're doing is very much like building around the AI and the ML.
Bro, really good ground in there and great to get that experience. Then ChatGPT launches in late 2022, and I understand there's a specific moment, something involving your previous position, a disagreement about documentation and a copy of Wired magazine. Can you let us know what happened there?
There's a bit of a story there. I think I'm quite opinionated in many things that I do. And I think whenever ChatGPT kind of came out at the time, I was still working at Bitweave, and I actually can't remember if we'd been acquired at that point or not. But the early versions of it, and you'll remember this yourself, they were all right. Like they were quite fun. It was almost like a kind of novelty toy. But I was very much interested in it from the very start of like, what can we actually do if we sort of push this? And the technology might not be there yet. So a lot of the time on the job, I would be experimenting with it for actually building software. And I would say I was kind of doing that before it was like actually any good at building software. So the results were quite poor a lot of the time. But you could sort of see the potential that it had already. And I could certainly see that it was something that was probably going to change how we started to write and build software from back then. And I think it's almost a kind of funny position to land in, because I think when you sort of think about AI and machine learning back in the day, from a software engineer's perspective, we always assumed like we'd be the last industry to get touched. I think we've got a bit of a superiority complex sometimes of like, oh, we're too smart and we know too much. And then when you start to see this technology come through, you're like, okay, we're actually probably going to be one of the first to be disrupted. And I don't think that we'd expected that. But the particular story was basically the project that I was on at the time involved me kind of traveling up and down the road to near Bristol over the years. And I was down one day for a sort of planning session that we were working on. And I'd been sort of hacking around and using ChatGPT for this sort of stuff for a couple of months by this point. And one of the tasks that I was on was basically documenting the system that we'd built up over the last couple of years so that we could do a kind of handover at the end. And I realized back then that like ChatGPT and these kind of systems were absolutely excellent at analyzing code to produce documentation. And I'd basically suggested to the team, like, we should use this because this will allow us to move way, way faster with this. And basically the response was like, we absolutely should not do that. And I was obviously a bit disgruntled by this. I was like, we should definitely be doing this. Like, this doesn't make any sense when we have a new technology and a new tool which can do this really, really well. We should run with it. But the response wasn't accepted as an idea. And I suppose we were quite early to it at that time. People kind of hadn't really trusted it and they didn't really know what was going on with it. But anyway, I left that meeting and went to the sort of kitchen in the office space that we were in, and they always had these magazines. So one of them was a Wired magazine, and that particular edition had like a feature all about OpenAI and basically what they were doing. And I took it away with me and I read it in the train up the road, and it was basically like a kind of feature piece on Sam Altman and how they were building it out and the sort of life that they were living. And it just sounded like chaos. It was like the Wild West, that they're going from like business to business, seeing how they can sort of bring this competitive edge with it. And I read it for probably 2 hours on this train journey home. And by the end of it, I was like, these guys get it. Like, I want to be doing that kind of stuff. I want to be doing this sort of disruptive work, which they're doing. And that was it. Basically, after that, I handed in my notice and we went on.
And that's it from there. Fascinating. It's fascinating. Like you've seen the opportunity there at such an early stage as well, and knowing it's going to really disrupt the market. And I suppose that leads you to kind of where you are now. So you left, you went travelling in Asia, and then you joined Tomoro. So how did that come together? How did you get the opportunity to join Tomoro?
So I took a bit of time out. I took a bit of time to travel, sort of figure out what I wanted to do next. I'd pretty much confirmed the idea that AI is going to be a big part of that, and I sort of seen a bit of the future of where that was going to go, and I wanted to be involved. So I took some time out to travel, and basically while I was kind of on the road and doing that, I was studying as much as I could. Basically try to figure out like, what is this landscape looking like, and how can I best equip myself with the skills to actually do well in that sector. And while I was doing that, there was a couple of companies that were sort of on my radar, and Tomoro was certainly top of it. And basically spent a fair bit of time kind of going around the houses, talking to some of the people from there, and hacking around on the side. So one of the things which I'd actually built was like a tool. So basically, if you have a job spec or a PDF, you can basically feed that job spec plus your CV into the system, and it will like completely tailor your CV to like all the kind of key points from that job spec. So basically I built that and then did it for like all the jobs that I was applying for, and it was basically, it wasn't like, it was trying to like augment your CV and like highlight the bits where there was good alignment. So basically I did that and then sent in the application to Tomoro, and I think I actually told Amy and stuff that that's what I'd done, and I think they probably rated that because it's kind of the sector that we're working with. So I managed to convince Sandy and Amy to give me a job, and here we are at Tomoro, a year and a bit on.
And Amy came from a recruitment background himself, so he'd have appreciated that too.
I'm sure.
We could have a full podcast on this, but some of the issues in the market at the moment with the talent and recruitment now are tools like that. Basically ChatGPT. There's companies advertising and maybe getting 500 applications, and every single one is perfect for the job. So there's a hell of a lot of work getting done at the other side. So fascinating you come up with that so early on as well.
Just try to solve my own problems, I suppose.
So you joined Tomorrow as an applied AI solutions architect, and then your role shifts to forward deployment engineer. What does that actually mean? Where are you, and what does a typical week look like for you?
I mean, the change in job title is very much a made up one, to be honest. We have like one job title and it's basically call yourself whatever you want, but you're a member of the technical staff. The forward deployed one is something that we sort of come up with because it sort of better reflects what we're doing just now. So for the first, what would it have been, a couple of months at Tomorrow, I was working on one particular client. I think we can actually name them Supercell, the gaming company. When I was working with them, there was basically a two-person team. We were working remotely, building solutions for their player support, which is their equivalent of customer support. And after we delivered on that project, there was an opportunity to be based with them on site in Helsinki. And it was a great team. It was like their internal AI team, fantastic guys, really great to work with. And basically the opportunity came up and I said, yeah, I'd love to do that. So it was 6 months, basically relocate to Helsinki and be in their office and work with them 5 days a week. So very much embedded work, and basically whatever their problems are become your problems, and you solve them together. So that's something that from a Tomorrow perspective, we've been doing for a while. I think we basically want to get as close to the domain that our clients work in and really deeply understand that, because it allows us to build the right sort of solutions for those problems. And it's just, you get very tight to the problem set.
Brilliant. And it's really good to hear for because a lot of people in the industry that they will enjoy traveling and see what other companies are doing, and get to other countries and experience some different cultures as well. Ideal. I'm quite fascinated about this part myself. I'm doing quite a lot of work at the moment in the kind of AI leadership across some enterprise businesses at the moment. I'm on a few searches. I've spoke to you about these before, and you're always great to kind of help me out and give me some advice and stuff, which is amazing to have people like you in the industry. But you mentioned Supercell. Can you tell us about the project? What you're building with them, and what does it take to get an AI system handling hundreds of thousands of users per day?
So I guess we kind of touched on it at a very light level there, but It's their player support function, which is their equivalent of
Yeah.
customer support. So basically, anytime that a player has a question about something to do with one of their games, so I guess for context, they make Brawl Stars and they make Clash of Clans and all
Yeah.
those kind of mobile games. They've got hundreds of millions of users, and as a result, they get hundreds of millions of questions from those users. And that can be stuff like about characters in the game, about the latest releases, about account recoveries, or all of those things. And right now, well, they're handled by some combination of AI and humans.
Yep.
So from a Tomoro perspective, we basically started that project, and our sort of promise to customers is that we can basically take a problem set like that and build a solution around it and actually deploy that into production on your infrastructure in 12 weeks or less. So the way that we typically do that is it's a small, fast-moving team. So for us, that was a 2 or 3 person team, basically working as closely as we can with that client on that problem for 12 weeks. And then by the end of it, we have a solution in production. And I guess there's a kind of a couple of things that we have to do to make that happen. First of all, like we have to really deeply understand the problem that they're trying to solve. And then secondly, we have to build with a sort of scale mindset. So I think a lot of other places right now are sort of working at the sort of prototype level. For us, we're not so interested in that. We basically want to see, like, can we actually get this technology solving the problems for real? And in order to do that at the sort of scale that we do, we have to basically build really robust systems to basically manage that. And I think that's kind of where the background that I've had from sort of software engineering, infrastructure engineering really helps, because you know how to build these scalable systems. And then the actual AI parts and the LLM parts, that skill set very much is the sort of software engineering skill set right now. You're making API calls, you're doing all this sort of stuff, which software engineers do every day. Of course, you have to understand the sort of capability. But once you understand that capability, it then is a kind of superpower to be able to build that into production.
Brilliant. And do you go in and kind of embed yourself with the teams, the technical teams within these businesses as well? And I suppose you'll be working like a C-suite as well, leadership within the companies. Yeah,
I mean, there's a couple of things like from a Tomoro perspective that we do. We kind of call them like the 3 S's: strategy, solution, and scale. So strategy is exactly what you expect it to be. That's your kind of C-suite leadership stuff, and sort of bringing alignment on like what is this technology and what can you do with it. The solution is basically what I covered there. So 12 weeks or less, we'll get it into production. And then scale is a sort of extension of that. So it's anything from like 3 months onwards. And that could be, okay, we've built you that solution into production. You want a bunch more features or a bunch more scale. We can do that on a sort of longer horizon sort of project. And the way that we deliver that is like some combination of being on site is always important, because you get to know your client and you get to know the problems. And then after that, we sort of work on whatever basis works best. So sometimes it's remote and then visit the client from time to time, or basically it's driven by what the client needs and what the client wants. If they want us in every day, we'd be in every day.
Brilliant. Fascinating. Love it. And one thing that strikes me about AI, about enterprise AI adoption, is that many companies are thinking about AI as a faster version of what they already do. How do you help clients think differently about what's actually possible?
This one's kind of hard, to be fair, and it's almost a bit controversial. A lot of thinking right now is the sort of like faster horses approach. And I guess this is like from back in the day when the sort of car was coming around. People never imagined that what they wanted was a car. They just thought, oh, what I wanted was a faster horse. And then when you think about the difference between a faster horse to what a car actually looks like, it's a totally different thing. And I think you see the same thing right now across enterprise and across not just across enterprise, but across like business. It's a case of like, well, we have this process right now. How can we make that process faster using AI? Sometimes that is the right approach, but oftentimes it's a case of you actually just need to completely reinvent that process. Because if you're trying too hard to augment what you've got already, you don't get the efficiency which you can get out of this technology. And I think that's hard because obviously we're all humans. We're employed into a job, and you want to feel the job security around that. And sometimes with this technology, you almost have to let go of that a little bit. And if you can have the mindset of, well, I have useful skills and I can apply them in different ways. I don't need to be so tied to this process. I can start to let that go and see where we can find optimization there. And I will always find something more interesting to work on. So I think that's kind of the biggest part, is how can you sort of not just build out your solutions, but also keep that mindset of there's very different ways to build now, and there's very different ways to solve problems.
Definitely. I suppose a big part of the job is really like convincing people who have been maybe stuck in their ways, working legacy systems, doing something some way for such a long time. Must be a big part of the job as well.
Not even just legacy systems, right? But like winning systems. Like if people have been running businesses that have been doing very well for a long time, how do you convince them that this is something that they need to change? And that's hard
Yeah.
because I think you basically just have to look at the market. And I mean, I'm very close to the sort of startup ecosystem.
Yeah.
And I think one of the biggest things that you see there is, especially in the last couple of years, is just like the speed and aggression that startups are able to build with.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite a dangerous place to be in if you're a big, slow-moving organization. And I think you're actually starting to see more of that as well. You're starting to see these startups who will take a big incumbent company and they just set them in their sights. And they're like, we're going to take them down and we're going to be the better product there.
Yep.
And we're going to do it with a 5-person team
Yeah.
when they have thousands of employees. And I think the thing that they have to get right in order to do that is they have to be using this technology and completely over-leverage themselves to deliver on that. But people are doing it.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we'll start to see more and more in the next couple of years. You're going to start to see big companies that have been around for a long time, they won't be around anymore.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. There's been a few sayings at some of my data leadership events. I'm trying to think what they were. It was something around like something or extinction and something else. It's just that's the kind of way it's going at the moment. And kind of a wee bit off what we were talking about there. You're seeing some large organisations, a financial services company, they came out yesterday and said they were putting like the full exec team, any board members, anybody that's in a real kind of executive position through AI, the training and stuff as well now. So I think like board members now, if they're not fit for purpose and have their eye on AI, are they really fit for purpose for these actual boards and taking businesses forward?
I think so.
Which is great.
This is, I guess, I don't know if we're going to cover this in one of the other questions, but that's kind of something that we almost see as like a requirement to make this work in the enterprise is, well, there's kind of two things, right? Like we obviously build solutions. That's part of what we do. And that is important. And I think that's important almost in the sense of if you're trying to figure out what you do as an organization, I mean, there's basically lists and reports that go out every year of like, this is the top 5 use cases for AI in the enterprise right now. And customer support and stuff like that is always at the top. Yeah. You can get quite far by just running with that and saying, okay, we're going to automate all of our support stuff. We're going to do all of the other stuff on this list. But I think the other thing which is less cracked in the market right now, and this is something that we are focused on a lot now as well, is the other side of that. So that's kind of half the battle. The other half of the battle is how do you basically change the mindset of your people to run with that as well? There's no point in having the best tools and the best automations when the rest of the organization doesn't think that way. Yeah. And I think you basically have to equip them from sort of the top down. So that, I mean, you have to have the C-suite buy-in and everyone below that has to be bought into.
No, definitely. 100%. I could talk about that all day, but we've probably got about an hour here. Yeah. So you're working in alliance with OpenAI. Beyond just using their models, what does a partnership look like in practice?
We work pretty closely with them. Yeah. So there's a kind of a few different forms that takes. So whenever we're working on a sort of client project or a client site, we have access to the OpenAI team and their sort of solutions architects. So we work kind of hand in hand with them to basically design solutions and sort of see like, we're building these things over here. What does that look like compared to the way you guys are building over there? And we sort of exchange notes and build kind of in collaboration in that sort of way. The other sort of utility that we have there is whenever they're trying to test their sort of latest and greatest models or features, often we'll work on a sort of early access basis where we can get hands-on with them, basically sort of test them out for some of the use cases that we actually see in enterprise. So like we work with a bunch of clients and we sort of understand the market of what they want and how they want to use this technology. For us, it's then a case of like, okay, let's kind of put these features and put these models through those paces and sort of collect how do they perform across the things that we actually need them to perform on. And then we document that up and we basically feed that back. So as a result of doing that, we're actually able to sort of direct where those models and where those features go next in order to like really tighten them up to the sort of enterprise demands.
Brilliant. I suppose that's testament to the people tomorrow hire, people like yourself and others. If you're put in a situation like that where you've got to work with OpenAI and you really need to know what you're talking about there.
We like to hire good people.
Yeah, definitely. I actually had that conversation with someone the other week there about the kind of process and getting a job at tomorrow and how you need to be the best. And that's a part of it as well, because you're collaborating with like OpenAI and you can't be putting people in front of them that don't know their stuff. So I mean, ideal.
Not just OpenAI, right? The rest of our clients as well. Like we want to have like the sharpest people on it. Yeah.
No, it was just OpenAI was in that conversation, but no, I get it. Ideal. But again, back to yourself, I'm curious about the pace. You mentioned flights every few days, working across Helsinki, Madrid, San Francisco, different industries, different challenges. How does that constant variety shape how you work and what you're learning?
It's a busy lifestyle
Yeah.
just now.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun as well. I think we're working with a lot of exciting clients. We're working with a lot of exciting partners, and as a result, we have to travel a lot to spend time with them and really get to know what they're doing. So the travel part is exciting, and it's really, really cool. And I think there's a couple of things that sort of shapes how we work as a result of that. You see a lot of things, like the way that sort of the startups that we interact with build, even the way that OpenAI and other partners build, like they very much move like startups. They move very, very fast. And then from a Tomoro perspective, we like to move really, really fast as a result of doing that. And I think that sort of combination of sort of pace and sort of enthusiasm for the technology probably is something that we pass over to the clients. And that's also, I imagine, why they quite like working with us.
Yes.
Some of the other things, though, that you get out of that, and I guess out of Tomoro and the way that we work more generally, is because you're seeing so many different clients and different problem sets, the rate of learning which you get here is absolutely insane. I think since like starting here, you're on like new problems every couple of days or every couple of weeks. And some of them will be sort of more long horizon ones where you're actually trying to build something to production. So you've got your sort of scaling problems and all of those kind of interesting things that come along with that. But then alongside that, you're also doing your sort of like day-to-day and sort of side of desk work where you're building prototypes in new spaces that you've never worked in. You have to see basically how quickly can you pick up those new technologies and like adapt and fit into those new problem sets. And the whole time that we're doing that, we're basically using these models and these technologies to learn faster. So yeah, that's probably the biggest thing for us. It's like, how quickly can you learn new problems and new domains, and how quickly can you use the models and the latest and greatest tech out there to make that even faster? And then that reflects in our build process as well. So like, how quickly can we then start to take that from like idea to sort of prototype all the way through to production? And I think for us, it's like, we really want to be sort of pace competitive. We've got quite a nice culture of trying to build faster than everyone else, and that kind of drives us.
I love it. It sounds exciting and intense, but if that's but if that's for the right people, I kind of love that side of things as well.
Same.
Maybe a few years ago, I can remember first building my business at MBA, and it was 8-9 years. I was living out a suitcase. It was more UK based, but I was up and down London, red eye, daily, weekly. So I love it. I love to see people really hustling as well. I think there's something that I really admire, the people who want to just work hard and move fast. And I think urgency, you can't take urgency away from the winners. Are urgent and get things done quicker.
I think that's the thing as well that we find is like the people who really join us and like love working here and love what we do are exactly those types of people. They want the hustle, they want it to be busy, they want it to be quite intense and quite stressful sometimes as well, and it drives them.
Definitely. So don't join us if you want to sit and hear a large scale enterprise client, and if you want to be out and about, seeing the world, learning new skills every day. What's not to want about that? I was going to actually touch on the culture at Tomorrow Bank. We've spoke about that there, but if you want to add anything else before we kind of move on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess kind of touched on the kind of key things is like variety of clients and excitement of the work. You work with some of the coolest partners, OpenAI and the like. But probably one of the biggest things, which kind of I've not mentioned yet, is just the actual people themselves, which is probably the biggest part and the most important part of all this. We are very much still a close-knit team. We've obviously scaled fast, but I think one of the biggest things that we've kept throughout all of the recruitment and sort of hiring processes is, well, obviously we need people that are smart and people that are sharp. But more importantly than that, we also want people that are like good people and they're going to fit in well. So the biggest thing for us is like, culturally, will you love what we're doing here, and will you sort of blend in with that really well? And as a result, like, it's such a fun environment to work in. Like, I mean, I've been here for a year and a bit now, and it doesn't really feel like you're working with this team. Like, it's a good laugh. I was in the Edinburgh office yesterday, and it's all like, we're getting work done, but it's all just a laugh at the same time. Like, it's a great team to be around.
I love that. And I think we ran a meetup just last month, or the month before, and it says a lot for Tomorrow and the culture and the people and what people are looking at in the market. I think we put a couple of messages out before 7 o'clock in the morning, just advertising the event, and it was like a waiting list within like less than 24 hours, and that was 100 people. So
it was excellent. And
it's a busy market, meetups these days. There's a lot happening, even in Scotland and throughout the UK. and globally really, but to get a meetup at full capacity within 24 hours says a lot for yourself and Tomorrow. So
I think that's
brilliant.
the last thing on that, I suppose,
Yeah.
as well, is like the reason why probably people like to come and work with us as well is we get access to a problem set which you can't really find anywhere else.
Yeah.
There's not many places that are sort of building the same sort of solutions that we are right now. And I think it's because, well, there's a couple of things. Like, we're obviously ambitious as a company and we want to build the coolest stuff. And we have this obsession with doing sort of things that haven't been done before and going 0 to 1. As a result of that, though, the clients that we also work with are equally as ambitious and they want to build stuff for the first time ever. And they basically look to us to be the partner to work with in order to do that. So one of the big things, and I think this is probably also why we get a lot of interest and talent coming through the doors, is we get those kind of curious people who want to sort of hack around and be like, this hasn't been done before and I really want to solve that problem
I love it.
for the first time. So that's it. I mean, the people are brilliant. The people are absolutely amazing.
Amazing. Okay, so you've been embedded with clients across Europe, the US, different industries. When you step back and look at how different regions are approaching AI, what patterns are you seeing?
I guess this kind of goes to the point that we covered earlier.
Yeah.
Like when you're talking about sort of building it, there is a sort of core set of features that people are testing out. Customer support is probably still top of that list. That's probably one of the strongest use cases that we see. But different industries use it differently. So obviously Supercell and that sort of gaming space are very much interested in that.
Yeah.
If you look at sort of financial services, they want to do different things. They like customer support is less at the top of their priority list to sort of automate with AI. But for them, there's a lot of interest in sort of knowledge graphs and how we can use large language models to basically ingest large amounts of data and then start to populate graphs and then do whatever you want to do with that downstream. One of the other really strong use cases that we see is customer facing, but is not like trying to automate. It's basically how can you make customer experience as good as it possibly can be. That stuff like the sort of voice models that you start to see where it's like, how can I have a conversation with someone, which is actually an AI, and it can deliver to me like the best customer experience, which I otherwise wouldn't be able to get because we can't have enough people to do that kind of job at the scale that we need to do it at. So we've got a lot of those kind of projects coming through at the minute just now. I guess Virgin Atlantic's one of the kind of public ones that we've been doing work with recently, and they've done a kind of live launch of what that looks like. But to be honest, there's almost not a pattern. Like, everyone wants different things, and I think to some extent, like right now, we're in a bit of a kind of Wild West market where like nobody really knows like what's out there and what's possible with that. So everyone's experimenting and seeing what can we do with this and like how can this solve our problems. And there's not really like a short path to get there. You just have to try it out.
Amazing.
And have that sort of experimental culture to make that work.
And the more case studies and the more success you're having and showing people you're taking stuff to production. Amazing. I love it. So let's talk about who's winning. Not the companies making headlines, but the ones you're working with who are actually making this work. What separates them from everyone else?
I guess this also kind of goes back to one of the points that we sort of touched on earlier. It's the two-sided thing, right? Like you've got your solution building and like actually building around the AI and building around the models. And that to some extent for us is like a bit of a solved problem now. Like we know how to build these systems and we know how to deploy these systems. The bigger part is on the sort of human side of orgs and how do you basically enable your people to really thrive and do well in this market. And it does go back to that sort of like winning mentality. The startups are doing this like really, really well right now. They are building with ridiculous pace. And they're able to do it with much smaller teams. And I think one of the challenges now for enterprise is like, okay, if they're able to do that, how can we sort of replicate that success in a much bigger organization? And in order to do that, you basically have to accelerate your people and you have to get them involved in that sort of process and deeply involved, and not even involved, but you basically want to get them driving that process. So something that we're doing more of now is basically when we're embedding with organizations, it's also a case of like trying to create that change, help them see this sort of new way of building and the new way of doing things. And to be honest, some of that is just like, it's hard unless you work with that stuff every day. For us, like we're very fortunate that we see basically the latest and greatest stuff as it comes out and we're always hacking around and testing it out. If you're in a larger organization and like your head's down just trying to solve a problem, it's almost hard to zoom out and see like what's available out there and how can we change how we work. So for us, it's like when we actually embed, we basically want to show people the power of this technology and show them a bit about how we use it and how we build with it. And to actually create that sort of like change and mindset shift around how you can do that and basically what's possible out there with it.
Nah, brilliant. Really good. And there's a lot of talk about AI skill shortage. From where you sit, watching teams succeed and fail at this, what actually matters when it comes to talent?
There's a couple of things. A couple of things that matter. You basically, in my opinion, I'm kind of biased because I'm from a startup background. In my opinion, the sort of skills that matter is the same skills that makes startups very good at this. They have a good approach to cutting away red tape when they can and sort of taking off the handcuffs and allowing them to just run fast at things. That's probably one of the biggest ones. But there's also kind of other situational things that you need to fix in order to make that happen. You need to basically allow your people to feel very much empowered to do that and give them the autonomy to say, okay, these things matter and we have to play by those rules, but these rules don't matter and we can sort of get around them. And then you basically need to equip them with the right sort of tools and the right sort of mindset to actually use those tools and to run with them. I guess that's kind of what we talked about earlier. But I think the biggest thing is the way it's always been in business is like that sort of winning mindset. You have to basically create the conditions where your team can find their own ways to optimize and actually win. And let them use the tools that are going to allow them to do that. I think like we're very fortunate that a lot of the clients that we work with have basically said these AI tools, we've vetted them and you can make use of them. I'm sure there's a lot of organizations out there which are still trying to get ChatGPT for enterprise over the line.
Definitely.
And it's like, what chance of your people got if they can't even get hands on with like those tools just now? So yeah, you basically have to unlock them and you have to let them run with it. And I think as we kind of said earlier, that direction has to come from somewhere. And if it's in an organization, it has to come from the top to say like, this is the direction we're going in. This is super important to us as a business. And I guess like some of the most successful clients that we've sort of seen in this space are the clients that have got very, very big and they're now the sort of incumbent companies. And they basically have this mindset of, unless we start to do something different, we are going to be disrupted by a smaller organization. And I think when they start to see that as like, okay, this is actually a bit of an existential threat to us as a business, we need to operate differently. And I'm very much convinced that we can make that happen and we can do that. That's when they really start to win with this, because they start to do different things and they start to work differently, start to see the world almost differently as well.
I love that. And I think a lot of what I'm seeing in the market, especially across C-suite, is I suppose they need to have the right partners here as well, because if you're panicking and worrying and you're jumping in and making wrong decisions and bringing in partners who aren't helping but hindering, it could be massive to your business as well. I think that's where the real fear lies. So again, hats off to people like yourself who can actually convince people that this will work and will take your business forward.
I mean, there is that, and we've obviously talked about this as well. Like there's almost there's a cost to waiting too long as well. Like you need to kind of make the jump sometimes. And I think the more things that you're trying out, the better. And I guess that's kind of, in my opinion, that's like part of the utility of these sort of technologies and these sort of tools. They allow us to experiment and test things way faster than we ever had before. Like you can basically go from, I have an idea, to let's build a prototype of this in an afternoon. And let's verify if that's a good idea by the end of the day. And if it is, you can put an engineering team on it to actually build that out. And if it's not, you can start tomorrow and test another concept. Like there's never been a faster time to actually test ideas and verify what's a good idea and what's not. And I think that's ultimately like, that's what's going to kind of unlock the success here. And I think, I guess this is probably a point that we could have touched on a bit earlier, like the difference between different cultures in their approach to this. I think obviously you've got the US and more specifically San Francisco and their sort of approach to this. They're very much open to that risk. And if they see that there's something which can pay off, they will run with it. I guess like Europe and the UK to some extent are more risk averse than that, and they're moving a little bit more slowly, and you sort of see that in the sort of regulation that's going out there. That's an interesting one for business and where that's going to kind of land people in the longer term. But then, I mean, the big one is that if you look towards China and towards the East, they are doing like so much stuff on this right now. And I think this is something which, I mean, in the West, we very much are aware of what OpenAI and what Anthropic and what Gemini and all these kind of model providers are doing. But a lot of people, if you speak to them, like they have no real awareness of like, what is AI in China.
Yeah.
And we see it a lot with Supercell right now. China are putting out phenomenal models around images or 3D modeling or that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get to the stage where we can't even get access to them in the West now.
Wow.
And that's such a competitive advantage, because if you're a company that is reliant on these models for your success, and you now just can't access them, or you now have subpar models, and there's this sort of almost fight for model superiority and what can you get your hands on. So I think this is the thing. It's if you're in the West and you have access to these tools, you have to be using them, because there might be a point where we don't even get access to the best ones now. Yeah. And it's
fascinating.
It's crazy. It's mad.
What a world we live in. It's fascinating. Yeah. And so you build AI systems, but then you have to live have to live inside organizations. What do executives need to understand about making AI actually work beyond just having the technology?
Yeah, this is kind of going on to the point that we touched on a bit earlier. You basically want, so I guess I'll give the Tomoro perspective. When we build solutions for clients, we basically don't want to just build a solution in 12 weeks and then throw it over the wall and you have no idea how to operate it.
Yep.
We basically want to build it in partnership with your engineering teams that you already have. We want to basically show them, this is how we work. This is what this technology is capable of. Yep. This is how you can use it. And also we want to find other use cases where they can use it in the business. And whether that's us building those use cases out or them building those use cases out, we don't really mind. But we basically want to upskill people as we kind of go along. Yeah. So I think that's one of the biggest ones. You basically want to upskill the teams that are already there so that they can both build and operate this technology. Mm-hmm. And then you basically want to empower them such that they can find these other use cases and build them out as well. And I think you want to create that sort of culture where it's really easy to do that. You basically, in my opinion, you want to empower your sort of engineers to be able to build, and your engineers can already build. Mm-hmm. And I guess the limitation for them is maybe just on the sort of AI side, because they might not have had the proximity to it that we've had. Okay. But I think outside of that, there's a lot of other people in your organization who have deep domain expertise and they are critical to how the business runs, but they're not necessarily able to write software, or up until this point, they weren't able to write software. Whereas I think now what we've managed to unlock is that to some extent everyone can sort of build software now. Yeah. And if you have a specific problem or a specific domain in mind, you can go away and you can use a tool like Lovable or Replit or any of these kind of lower barrier to entry tools where you can actually build that prototype out in a couple of hours. Yeah. And you can take it to your team and say, oh, we had this problem yesterday. I've written this small piece of software which actually solves it for us. And now people can use it. And I think there's never been a time before like that where you had such leverage to create this kind of stuff and solve your own problems. And maybe you can't take it all the way through. You can't bring it to production or you can't deploy that sort of stuff. Yeah. But you can go quite far with that already. And some of the stuff that we're now focusing on from a Tomoro perspective is okay, if you've got your deep domain experts who are now able to sort of build that to the prototype level, how easy can we make it for them to then take that to production in an enterprise sort of setting? And I think that'll be quite a big unlock, because then you start to and this goes to the sort of cultural and sort of mindset shift. You create a sort of hacker culture of how can we sort of innovate and optimize in this organization? Yep. And it's not just something for the engineering teams to do. It's something that everyone can actually do. I don't know. And I think as well, that kind of touches on I don't know if this is one of the other questions that we're going to touch on, but the sort of engineer skill set and how that's starting to change as well. Yeah,
definitely. I think we could have another podcast on that as well.
Maybe.
But no, I think just some of the stuff we're speaking about today is going to be fascinating for people in industry, not just people in AI, across business, because this is going to affect everyone. And I think the way you've really put it in a positive light as well about the opportunity and excitement and how businesses could really, transform. No, really good. But if you were sitting here in 2 or 3 years, what do you think the landscape looks like? What should companies be doing now to position themselves?
That's a very good question. So I think, again, to touch on some of the points that we've kind of covered, it'll be a very different landscape. I think maybe not in the 2 or 3 year mark, but I think certainly in 5 years' time, there'll be a lot of companies that we're used to using every day, which are not around anymore because they've been replaced by new companies. Yeah. I think the pace that things are changing at is kind of wild. As we said, it's very much like the Wild West. There's new stuff every day. Yep. No one really knows what's going on with it, and they're all trying to kind of wrangle to see what is the right way and what is the right route to go down. Over the next 2 or 3 years, I think probably the main things to focus on if you're a big sort of enterprise. First one is basically taking off the sort of easy access use cases, like your sort of customer support automation and the sort of list which all the other big consultancies put out around these are the top use cases. Start going after stuff like that, and either you can build that in-house, or if you can't build it in-house, work with partners like us who can sort of take you on that journey. But I think the bigger unlock is definitely on that people side. You want to create the mindsets within your organization that's going to basically adapt and run with that change and turn it into sort of like that winning culture of like, how can we use this to actually create business value? I think that's the two biggest things. And if I was to sort of stack it of which one's more important, I would say the people side is probably more important. Like if you can create that culture and create that mindset, your people will then be able to build those solutions, and they'll have that sort of mindset of, we can kind of tackle this. This is something which, from a Tomoro perspective, we kind of talk about quite a lot internally, and a few of our engineers have said this. With, I guess, before this technology, if you were like a sort of Java developer or a Python developer, you sort of had your domain of expertise and what you were happy to work on. And you maybe didn't work that far outside of that. You would stay within your niche, and that was it. And if there was some sort of task that was like a front-end task or stuff, it's not really your thing. You don't really touch it. I think now, though, because you have the ability to sort of leverage these tools, I certainly see it this way, like and I know a bunch of our engineers do as well. It's no longer about like, what do I know and what can I do? You basically have tools now which condense like all of the information and sort of knowledge that humanity has ever had. So it's now a case of like, what can I do with the knowledge that humanity has access to here? And that opens up everything. So now it's like, okay, I might not be the number one engineer on the planet to tackle this use case, but I'm now equipped with the tools which can actually let me have a good crack at it. And we'll be able to get it 80% of the way. And the last 20%, we can bring a specialist in if we need to. But a lot of the times you kind of find 80% of the way is all you needed to get in the first place. So you've basically now got this culture of like, we can try everything. Like we can actually have a go at it.
Definitely.
Which is an exciting place to be in.
That's brilliant. When I sit and do these podcasts, my head just runs 100 miles an hour. I'm thinking about like, at the moment, as you're talking, I'm thinking about like kind of leadership within some larger, say, enterprise clients and the kind of types of people who could really help bring, take companies forward. And I'm thinking more about that kind of startup people coming from who've really built their own businesses, built their startup, maybe exited or got themselves to a good level within there, and bringing that mentality into larger scale businesses rather than moving one person from one enterprise to the other. It's real, or people in enterprise who've worked with people like yourself maybe for a year and really get that kind of mentality and know how to push things forward. So
I mean, we talked about this the other day, right?
It's like good.
There's
get me thinking.
You want to have. There's probably never been a better time to have your really technical executives, because the amount of selling that's going on in the market right now of like, everyone needs this solution and you want to buy this solution, unless you're technical enough to know we absolutely do not need that solution and that's not the right approach here. It's very easy to get sold on this stuff.
I can imagine.
So I think it's like you want basically almost that first line defense of like, I know what you're talking about, and it's nonsense sometimes.
So that's a very good point. I actually did a post about that on LinkedIn, and a few people actually contact me after our conversation. Sometimes with my social media, when I have a conversation, I can put it out there to see what the feedback was, and it's like, definitely. And you think about like, because everybody's desperate to get this right as well. So it's like, someone comes in, they're really good, and they're selling them something. It's easily to go, right, let's get this moving, but it could be a massive costly exercise if they've got it wrong as well.
And I think I'm obviously biased. I've come from a startup background, but I think the startup background is quite a good one on that, because it's got there's a sort of air of frugality to like how it works, and it's like, unless I can see a really strong business case for whatever this solution is, we're probably not going to do it. Definitely. So it's like, it's very much grounded in reality, and it sort of keeps the ball on the ground from that perspective.
And I love that as well, because there'll be a lot of people from corporate and enterprise who'll think people from startup aren't like that. They'll come in and they'll just go for things and do things differently, but the way you put that there's perfect.
You have to operate on a shoestring budget, right? So like everything has to make sense. It has to be justified.
Of course. Okay, so we're closing it off now. This is honest. This has been brilliant. But before we wrap up, where can people find you? Where can they find out about yourself and the work Tomoro's doing?
So for me, I'm only on LinkedIn. So connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd love to continue the chat. Tomorrow, we're on LinkedIn and basically on our website, Tomorrow AI. And we're quite a social bunch, so we'd love to have a chat, reach out to anyone.
Everybody's out there, which is great. And thanks again for joining. And to the listeners, stay tuned for more conversation on how leaders and innovators are navigating the AI landscape. But thanks, Tom. Brilliant.
Thank you very much for having me. It's great fun.
That. Cheers. Thanks very much. Thanks for listening to A Class Act. If you've enjoyed the episode, make sure to follow the show so you never miss a conversation. And if you're building a data team or making a key leadership hire, reach out to us at NBN Solution using the link in the show notes.